You'll never be able to practice medicine again, Patricia said, her lips curled in a satisfied smirk as she leaned forward at the end of that long, sterile hospital boardroom table. A woman dressed in a power suit and polished spite, with eyes like frostbite and a voice that could sandwood. I've taken care of everything. Now my daughter will finally leave you. I stared at her across the mahogany slab, the words barely registering. Not because I didn't understand, but because I'd already read the ending to this little story she thought she was writing. I smiled, small, polite, just enough to make her skin itch, and said, "Thank you for your concern, Patricia." She blinked, taken aback, probably expecting outrage or begging. What she didn't know was that I'd stopped reacting the moment I caught them. Not her, mind you. Them. Claire, my wife of 6 years, and Dr. Brandon Leary, the orthopedic surgeon who strutted around like a walking commercial for cologne and midlife crises. The same Brandon I had once helped land a surgical fellowship by personally vouching for his character. What a joke. I'd found them 3 weeks earlier in the on-call room. Her laugh, that fake high-pitched trill she reserved for people she was trying to impress, had slipped under the door and tugged me closer. I walked in without knocking. I still remember the color draining from Brandon's face, like someone had pulled the plug. Claire just pulled the sheet up and turned her head, didn't even try to explain. Cold. Efficient. Like this was a procedure she'd rehearsed. I didn't say a word. I turned around, walked out, and that's when the wheels started turning. Patricia thought she was delivering the final blow that day in the boardroom. She had filed a formal complaint against my license, claimed I'd falsified post-op notes to boost billing. She'd pulled strings with the hospital board, connections made through decades of backroom deals and fundraising dinners. I'd already been suspended pending investigation. Patricia used phrases like ethical breaches, liability concerns, and necessary course of action. It wasn't just about ruining me. No, this was about legacy. Her legacy. Her daughter couldn't be married to a disgraced doctor. It wasn't a good look. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd spent the last 3 weeks documenting everything. Not just the affair. The forged prescriptions in Brandon's handwriting. The unofficial Botox parties Claire had been running out of her mother's estate using hospital supplies. The insurance fraud. The shell companies Patricia funneled hospital donations through. The shell companies I had traced, documented, and quietly packaged into a neat, anonymous file. So when she looked at me like that, when she thought she was pushing me off a cliff, she had no idea I'd already landed on the other side, on solid ground, building my own little arsenal. That night, I stood in the kitchen of our house, or rather, my house, since I bought it 5 years before Claire even entered the picture, watching her sip wine like it hadn't all gone up in smoke. She had the nerve to hum as she scrolled her phone, fingers flicking through whatever dinner reservations or Instagram models she followed. I cleared my throat. How was work? She didn't look up. Same. You. Interesting meeting with your mom today. That got her attention. Her head snapped up, eyes narrowing. What did she say? Nothing new. Just the usual threats and backhanded blessings. She's just trying to protect me. Oh, I know, I said. She's very thorough. Claire stared at me for a second too long, like she was trying to figure out if I was bluffing. Then she shrugged. Anyway, I'll be staying at her place for a few days. I nodded. Of course. What I didn't tell her was that I'd already installed software on her phone. Nothing invasive, just enough to copy every text, every voice memo, every drunken rant she whispered into her notes app when she thought no one was listening. I was listening. The first domino fell the next morning. A news alert popped up on the hospital's internal network. Anonymous tip leads to audit of surgical billing practices, multiple doctors under review. Brandon was named. So was Claire. Not me. I'd made sure of that. Claire called me in a panic before noon, her voice brittle and thin. Did you do this? Do what? I said, my tone level. I've been suspended, remember? I'm irrelevant now. But they're talking about arresting people, Logan. This is serious. That's unfortunate, I said. She didn't call back. That night, I poured myself a glass of scotch and stood on the balcony overlooking the city. Somewhere across town, Patricia was probably dialing every number in her contacts list, screaming into her wine glass about damage control. Claire would be packing, maybe deleting texts, maybe begging Brandon to protect her. And me? I wasn't broken. I was just getting started. The morning after the audit broke news across the hospital, I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. Claire. Of course. I let it buzz until it stopped. 5 minutes later, it buzzed again. Patricia this time. Persistent. Ruthless. Desperate. Exactly where I wanted them. I poured a coffee, black and bitter as my mood, and opened the file folder I kept hidden in the back of my closet, the physical backup of everything I had. Paper trails. Financial records. Off-the-book surgeries billed under fake patient IDs. I'd even managed to snag copies of Patricia's communications with hospital executives, emails full of threats, quid pro quo promises, and not-so-veiled blackmail. It was beautiful. A symphony of greed and hubris. And I was holding the conductor's baton. Around noon, I finally answered Claire's call. "Logan." "Thank God," she started, her voice shaking. I cut her off. "Let's meet." Silence, then a wary, "Where?" "Our spot." "Half an hour." Our spot was a tiny coffee shop off Elm Street, the place we used to sneak off to during residency, before life got complicated and everything that mattered got traded for status and appearances. When I got there, Claire was already at a corner table, sunglasses pulled low over her eyes like she was expecting paparazzi. I slid into the booth across from her. For a second, it was almost like the old days, before betrayal became the third party in our marriage. Then she opened her mouth. "This wasn't supposed to happen," she whispered. "It was just supposed to push you out, not drag everything down with it." I leaned back, arms crossed. Interesting strategy. Destroy everything, just to get rid of me. Her hands twisted in her lap. "You don't understand. Mom said if we made you look unstable, if we could suspend your license, it would give me a clean break. No messy divorce hearings, no alimony." I laughed, low and humorless. "And what about Brandon? Was he part of the clean break too, or just your side hobby?" She flinched. "Good. I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said, her voice cracking. "You meant for it to go far enough," I said coldly. "You meant for me to lose everything." Her eyes darted around the cafe, making sure no one was close enough to hear. "We can still fix this. If you help me, help us, we can turn it around. I'll even testify that you were set up." I smiled then. A real, wide, wolfish smile. "Claire," I said softly, "there is no us anymore." When I left her sitting there, crumbling into a puddle of desperation and regret, I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel sadness. I felt clarity. There's a difference between losing and letting go. One leaves scars. The other leaves freedom. That night, I made the next move. Using a burner phone registered to a fake name, I sent the entire file, every scrap of evidence, to an investigative journalist who'd been digging into hospital corruption for months. I knew her by reputation. Tough. Fair. Ruthless when she smelled blood. I included a short note. "Follow the money. Start with Patricia. End with Claire and Brandon." "You're welcome." Then I poured myself another glass of scotch and waited. 2 days later, the news exploded. Prominent hospital board member implicated in fraud, embezzlement scandal. Patricia's mugshot hit the front page of every major outlet by evening. Brandon was suspended pending criminal investigation. Claire's medical license was officially under review. Me? I sat in my quiet house, a free man, sipping the good scotch, watching the empire they built crumble into dust. No gloating. No public spectacle. Just silent, strategic justice. Exactly the way betrayal should be answered. 2 weeks after Patricia's arrest, the fallout hit harder than I even imagined. Claire had gone dark, no texts, no calls, not even a screaming match. Silence. Funny how the people who once clung to you for comfort disappear the second their ship starts taking on water. But that was fine by me. I wasn't finished yet. I had coffee that morning at a diner downtown, flipping through the newspaper like an old man savoring a fine cigar. There it was on page 3, multiple properties linked to Patricia Simmons' seized pending investigation. Reading between the lines, I knew exactly what it meant. Their money, Patricia's, Claire's, even Brandon's, was tied up in dirty deals. The IRS had stepped in now. Frozen accounts. Seized assets. Investigators were already clawing through mountains of fraudulent donations and illegal billings. Claire wouldn't just lose her career. She'd lose the house. The cars. The designer handbags she treated like trophies of her self-worth. She built her life like a castle made of playing cards, and I had just kicked over the foundation. Later that afternoon, I got a visit. Not from Claire. Not from Patricia's army of lawyers. From Brandon. I heard the knock and opened the door to find him standing there, looking like a man who'd been dragged behind a truck. His hair was uncombed. His jaw was clenched so tight I thought he might break a tooth. "Logan," he said, voice tight. "We need to talk." I leaned casually against the doorframe, sipping my coffee. "Do we?" "I know you're behind this," he said. "You think you're smart, But you're dragging Claire down with you. I chuckled. No, Brandon. Claire dragged herself down. She just thought no one was watching. She's not like. Save it, I snapped. You and Claire made your choices. Patricia made hers. I'm just the guy who decided to stop playing stupid. Brandon shifted, struggling to find the old arrogance he used to wear like a second skin. She's going to lose everything. You still love her, don't you? I laughed harder than I had in months. Brandon, I said, my voice dropping low and cold, I don't even know her anymore. And whatever's coming for her, she earned it. With interest. I closed the door in his face before he could spit out another word. That night, a friend at the hospital texted me a grainy photo from the ER security cameras. Claire, disheveled, screaming at the chief of medicine. Security escorting her out of the building. Her medical license had been suspended pending criminal investigation. No more fancy scrubs. No more surgery center contracts. No more career. Just a woman standing on the ashes of everything she burned. I spent the next few days finishing my own quiet transition. I'd already lined up a new opportunity, private consulting work for a biotech startup on the other side of the country. No hospital politics. No boardrooms full of snakes. And no Claire. The only thing left was one final move. One last nail in the coffin. Before I packed up the house I owned outright, the one her mother had threatened to take from me, I called the movers and had Claire's remaining things boxed up. Every last designer dress, every pair of shoes, every scrap of vanity and ego. I had them delivered to Patricia's mansion, now cordoned off with crime scene tape and crawling with federal agents. Petty? Maybe. Satisfying? Absolutely. I locked the door to the house one final time that evening, the setting sun throwing long, blood-red shadows across the lawn. No fanfare. No goodbyes. Just a clean, sharp ending. Exactly the way it needed to be. By the time I hit the interstate heading west, the city in my rearview mirror looked small, shrinking like it should have a long time ago. The open road stretched out in front of me, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight of someone else's expectations suffocating me. No more Claire pretending. No more Patricia scheming. No more pretending the world wasn't cracking beneath my feet. It was just me. Me, and the clean slate I'd fought for. I rented a small cabin in the foothills outside Denver, something temporary while I figured out my next move. It had no granite countertops or fancy decor. Just wood, stone, and silence. Exactly what I needed. The first night, I stood out on the porch with a bottle of cheap beer, listening to the crickets, watching the stars punch through the sky like broken glass. It felt almost unfamiliar, not waiting for the next fight, the next manipulation, the next betrayal. Freedom is a strange thing after you've been caged for so long. It tastes sweeter than victory. Of course, Claire didn't stay silent for long. It started with texts. First, the predictable ones. We need to talk. Please, Logan. You're making a mistake. I still love you. Then the angrier ones. You're ruining both our lives. You were never enough for me anyway. You'll regret this. I didn't respond. Why would I? The dead don't answer the cries of the people who buried them. Then Patricia's lawyers came sniffing around. Thinly veiled threats dressed up as legal notices, implying lawsuits, defamation claims, obstruction charges. I sent back one letter, through my own attorney, a friend I trusted with a taste for war. Simple. Precise. Proceed and discover. I look forward to public cross-examination. Because if they sued me, everything would become evidence. Depositions. Subpoenas. Public court records. Patricia couldn't afford that. Neither could Claire. Not with the feds already breathing down their necks. The threats dried up fast after that. I spent my days consulting remotely for the biotech startup, giving them the insight they needed, building something new from the ground up. My nights? Those I kept for myself. Long walks under a bleeding sunset. Books I hadn't touched in years gathering dust now devoured by firelight. A quiet so pure it made my ears ring sometimes. I thought maybe, just maybe, this could be a new life. A better one. I almost believed it. Almost. One night, an envelope showed up on my doorstep. No return address. No markings. Just my name, scribbled in a hand I hadn't seen in a long time. Inside was a single photo. Claire. Sitting across from Brandon at a cheap diner. No makeup. No designer clothes. Just a woman stripped bare by consequence. She looked small. Defeated. Taped to the back was a note, just 4 words. She's your problem now. No signature. But I didn't need one. I knew exactly who sent it. Patricia. Even after being dragged through the mud, Even with her empire crumbling around her, she still couldn't resist getting the last word. A last pathetic shot at guilt-tripping me. I tossed the photo into the fire without even looking twice. Let them rot together. Let them tear each other apart trying to scrape something out of the ruins they made. I wasn't coming back. Not for her. Not for the apology she would never mean. Not for the ashes of a life I didn't want anymore. A week after burning the last image of Claire, I started getting the calls. Blocked numbers. Private lines. Voicemails with heavy breathing, half-started apologies, slurred sobbing. At first, I ignored them. But curiosity, that old traitor, finally got the better of me. One night, after another blocked call came through, I picked up. Silence on the other end. Then her voice, so quiet it was almost a ghost. "Logan, please. I need you." It was Claire. Of course it was. Patricia's empire had fallen. Brandon had been indicted on charges of medical fraud. Their assets had been frozen, their reputations obliterated. The golden life they thought they deserved? Gone. Now she needed the man she once betrayed to save her. Typical. I didn't hang up. I didn't speak. I just let the silence stretch, thick and unbearable. Finally, I said, "You should have thought about that before you tried to bury me." Then I hung up. And for the first time in years, I felt no guilt. No anger. Just a clean, satisfying nothing. The real kicker came 2 days later. A certified letter arrived at the cabin, hand-delivered by a courier who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else but standing on my porch. Inside the envelope? Divorce papers. Filed by Claire. The woman who once swore she would never give up on us was now legally severing ties. The grounds listed? Irreconcilable differences. No mention of her infidelity. No mention of the lies, the fraud, the betrayal. Typical Claire, rewrite the story so she could be the victim in her own narrative. I signed them the same afternoon. No contest. No alimony. No settlements. She had nothing left to take from me. And I had nothing left to give. I mailed the signed papers back without a second thought. No note. No goodbye. Just my signature, cold and final, like a scalpel severing dead tissue. The night after I mailed the divorce papers, I sat on the porch with a glass of bourbon, watching a summer storm roll in over the mountains. The wind howled. The rain hammered the roof like angry fists. The sky split open with jagged white fire. And me? I sat there smiling. Because the storm wasn't something to fear anymore. It was just weather. Something that came and went, leaving the world a little cleaner afterward. I thought that was the end. I thought I could close the chapter and move on. But people like Claire? They don't just go away quietly. No. They come back. Crawling. Begging. Scheming. And when they do, you better be ready to finish the job properly. 2 months after the divorce papers were finalized, I got another visit. It was a Sunday afternoon. Rain coming down in slow, steady sheets. I was sitting at the kitchen table, working on a new proposal for the biotech firm, when I heard the knock. Soft. Uncertain. I almost didn't answer. I should have trusted that instinct. When I opened the door, there she was. Claire. Standing there like a wet stray. Her once pristine designer coat clinging to her like a second skin, makeup smudged, hair limp from the rain. She wasn't the polished surgeon's wife anymore. She was just wreckage. I didn't say anything. Just leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Logan," she whispered, shivering. "Please. Just hear me out." I didn't move. Didn't invite her in. Didn't offer a towel. She took that as permission to keep talking. "They took everything," she said, voice cracking. "The house. The accounts. I'm staying with a friend, but it's not working out." I waited. She sniffled, brushing soaked hair from her face. "I know I messed up. I know I don't deserve anything from you. But I have nothing left. Please, Logan. Just help me get back on my feet. Just a little." There it was. Not love. Not regret. Need. The same need that had driven every decision she ever made. Only this time, there was nothing in it for me. I stared at her for a long moment, weighing the 100 ways I could respond. Anger. Pity. Spite. In the end, I chose none of them. Instead, I said, "You remember what your mother said to me at the board meeting?" Claire frowned, confused. "What?" I smiled, slow and cold. "You'll never practice medicine again." Her face drained of color. "You're right," I said. "You don't deserve anything from me. You made your choice." I stepped back and started closing the door. Her hand shot out, catching it desperately. "Logan, please. I don't have anyone else." I looked her dead in the eye. "You never did." And then I closed the door. this time for good. She stayed out there for a while. I heard her crying at first, then pounding on the door. Then eventually, silence. When I checked an hour later, she was gone. And the only thing she left behind was a soggy, crumpled piece of paper stuffed under the doorframe. It was a note, scrawled, frantic. You'll regret this. You'll end up just as miserable as me. I smiled. Because misery? Misery was the currency Claire dealt in. And me? I was finally rich in something she could never touch. Peace. The next morning, I dropped the note into the fireplace, watching it curl and blacken until it was nothing but ash. Just like her future. Just like every lie she ever told.